Let's all give a round of applause for Evan.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me back. It's wonderful to be here. Hello, everybody. I'm Evan. Like what was just described, there will be an event tonight where I'll be doing a formal hypnosis show, so I hope to see you all there. But before we get started here, I want to talk about not only my experience becoming a hypnotist and my mental health journey that kind of brought me there, but I also want to explain the fundamentals of how the mind works, because I didn't know how my mind worked before I got certified as a hypnotist. I don't think many people here do, and it's not really rocket science. I think you learn a lot more complicated things here at IMSA than what I'm about to describe to you. So before we get started here, everybody, please do exactly what I say. We're going to do a little game here. Do exactly what I say, only what I say. Please take your hand, either right or left, put it out in front of you. Don't hit the person in front of you. Please be nice. Whoa! And I want you to take that hand and make a circle shape with it. Okay, great. Now please put it up to your forehead. Turn to somebody near you and say, "I'm a unicorn." I just wanted to see y'all do that. There was no point to that. All right, seriously now, here's the real game. Take that circular shaped hand. Please do exactly what I say. I want you to please take that circular shaped hand and move it in a clockwise direction. Clockwise direction. Counterclockwise direction. Clockwise direction again. Counterclockwise direction again. Now please bring that hand to touch your chin, just like this. Very good. You ready? We're going to do it again a little bit faster this time. Please do exactly what I say. Clockwise direction with that circular shaped hand. Counterclockwise direction with that circular shaped hand. Clockwise again, bigger, faster circles this time. Counterclockwise, smaller, faster circles this time. Counterclockwise, bigger, faster circles this time. Now once again, please bring up your hand to touch your cheek. Who's on their chin? Oops. Yeah, I know. It happens. So, very simple explanation for how I was able to trick you. Okay? Habit. Habit is how I was able to trick you. Did we touch our cheek before? No, we touched our chin before, right? So your subconscious mind made an assumption. You assumed I meant chin when I said cheek, because that's what we did before. So that's indeed what most of you in this room did. You touched your chin. Habit reigns supreme in our lives. Habits make up most of the decisions we make every single day, whether or not we want them to, right? And a lot of times, it's a good thing. We don't have to think about walking every single time we take a step, like we used to have to do when we were toddlers learning how to walk. It's nice to be able to multitask when we're walking somewhere, right? So in that way, habit's good. Sometimes habit can be really destructive. Who here checks their phones compulsively? I put my hand up immediately because I'm saying it for myself as much as anybody else. Checking their phones compulsively just to see if there's a message on there. Even if you don't have a notification, you still check your phone, right? There's a reason for that. We're conditioned to do that because of the magic of maybe. Maybe I'll get a message on my phone. Maybe I'll get a notification. Maybe that person that I really like is going to send me a message. And we get a 400% spike in dopamine every time we get a notification on our phone. That's something we've all been conditioned to do. Habits are the roadblocks, the roadmap to creating addiction in a lot of our lives. So habits make a lot of decisions for us without us meaning to. What else controls what we do besides habit? A big one is emotion. Who here ever made a decision out of a feeling like despair, anger, fear, hate, love, sadness? Yeah, most of us make decisions from our emotions. Ask anybody in advertising and they'll tell you that anytime they're advertising a product, it's not about necessarily what the product is, it's about how you feel about the product. It's about getting them to feel something in response to the advertisement. Same thing with political campaigns, right? What's another thing that controls what we do? Memory. Memory is a big one. Memory is a teacher. Memory teaches us what to aspire to do again and again, like, oh, I want that 400% spike in dopamine on my phone. Or sometimes it could encourage us to stay away from something. Like, oh, I'm actually not going to tell that person that I was really hurt by what they said because last time they reacted in a really negative way. Or I'm not going to speak out because the last time I spoke out, I got punished for it. Or I'm not going to tell that person I like them because I got heartbroken before. Memory is a teacher. It teaches us what to get over and over again and also what to avoid. And finally, This is the biggest thing that controls what we do. Most people don't think of this. I certainly didn't before I got trained as a hypnotist. Imagination. And no, I'm not talking about imagination for my SpongeBob fans. We got SpongeBob fans? I hope so. Okay, yeah. I'm talking about anxiety. That's what I'm talking about. How many people here, either they themselves or they know somebody who is dealing with anxiety? Yeah, it's all the rage these days. Newsflash, pretty much everyone deals with anxiety and anxious feelings at one point or another in their lives. Anxiety, in the simplest way that I can describe it to you, is simply imagination mingled with memory. Think about that for a second. Imagination mingled with memory equals anxiety. Typically, it's bad memories, right? Now, why does that impact us physically? I'm going to get to that in a second, but those four things, imagination, habit, memory, and emotions, control most of the decisions we make every single day. And where are all four of those things living within our minds? The subconscious mind. The subconscious mind makes most of the decisions we make every single day, whether or not we want it to. Can we control our subconscious mind? Maybe. I don't really know the answer to that. It's very hard to control our thoughts and thinking. Try not to think of a pink elephant right now. Anybody here successful? It's really hard to control what you think because you're not thinking of a pink elephant? Yeah. It's really hard to control what we think because we can't control what other people do. We can't control our environment. We can't control what happens in the world. Things happen that make us think things that necessarily we might not want to think, right? So we can't control our thoughts necessarily. Do our thoughts impact us physically? Think about this for a second. If you're watching TV, do you laugh when something's funny? You cry when something's sad? You scream when something's scary? But you know what you're watching isn't actually happening in front of you. It's just a two-dimensional screen of light projecting images at your face, but you're still reacting emotionally as though it were happening. Why is that? Because our subconscious minds and our brains at large have a very difficult time telling the difference between what is real and what isn't. There's a great study, actually numerous studies published by David Brooks in the New York Times, if anybody wants to look this up to verify what I'm saying here. Folks were asked to look at a chair and think of a chair. Their brains were scanned both times, and similar parts of their brains were active when thinking of a chair and actually looking at a real one, which confirms what we already knew, which is that if we see something on a TV screen outside of ourselves, or we see something on a TV screen in our minds, it impacts us physically, or at least it has the ability to. And this is why anxiety, anxious feelings, traumatic sensations, or sensations brought on by trauma, are physical. It's also why every single person's anxiety is different. And you can't pinpoint, oh, you have anxiety, so that means you must get headaches. You must get nausea. You must get frozen when you talk to people. Everybody has a different reaction to anxiety. That's because everybody thinks differently, and everyone's thoughts impact them differently. So if we can't control our thoughts, and our thoughts impact us physically, and we can't control anything around us that impacts what we think, then it kind of seems like we're just destined to feel like crap all the time, right? Pretty much, at least that's what I thought. And sometimes I still feel like that sometimes. But the reality is there are a plethora of tools out there available, mental health resources, to help build your fitness in combating that way of thinking. And actually remembering that you have a lot more power than you think. Hypnosis is one of those tools. Hypnosis is the ability to access the faculties of the subconscious mind, habits, memory, emotions, and imagination, and getting back into the driver's seat of those four main faculties of the subconscious, rather than being a victim to them and whatever they decide to do for you in your life. The reason why I care so much about this and why I'm talking to you about this is not just because I happen to be in town. I was going through a really big mental health crisis in my life. I, during the Me Too movement, was feeling a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. I was acting out and getting angry with people without feeling like I had any control over my emotions. I was doing destructive habits. I was an addict. And I don't mean the traditional drug addict, I mean a phone addict. I was probably on my phone all day, trying to find ways to distract myself. Sometimes it worked. Most of the time it didn't. I still felt like crap, until finally I decided, okay, I'm gonna get busy working because I'm not willing to actually confront and sit with the trauma that I was dealing with. So I decided to become an apprentice to a hypnotist. I did this, to be totally honest with you, because I thought it was going to make me more money. And I wanted to distract myself from what was going on in my life. What I didn't know was that this man would change my life and teach me things about my mind that I never knew before. Some of it was what I just described to you, about the mechanisms of the subconscious and that our thoughts impact us physically. But when I started to unpack, what are the thoughts that I'm thinking and how are they impacting me physically? What in my environment is making me feel this anxiety? And I finally was able to unpack, oh yeah, it's the Me Too movement. Why is that upsetting me? And then I was able to go back to a memory of when I was younger and sexually assaulted, going to the police and them eventually dropping the case. And feeling like, even though I put myself out there and did the right thing, went to the authorities, told people numerous times, please avoid this man that was a very dear mentor of mine. And people didn't listen to me, people didn't believe me. So finally what I decided to do was, well, while it wasn't my fault what happened to me, it was my responsibility to make myself feel better. And everybody does that in their own way, and for me that was, I need to stop feeling so guilty and feeling so ashamed of what happened. And the best way that I can do that is by producing a Me Too statement so that it's out there, it's public, I don't have to worry about it anymore, and if somebody wants to deal with this guy, they can, so be it, but it's on them. Because when it happened to me, and I looked this man up and I was like, hey, he gives me a kind of creepy feelings inside of me, nothing was online. Nothing was there. So I produced a Me Too statement. The Boston Globe picked it up. There were other boys that came forward talking about this man doing similar things to them that he did to me. Ended up this man had been convicted of assaulting a child, a 12-year-old child, and never served a day in jail. He assaulted dozens of young men and children, including his own foster children, across the country over 50 years. And eventually, I had to go in and out of the courtroom and talk about what happened to me over the course of 9 years. This is before the Me Too movement and afterwards too. And the reason why a lot of these folks get away with this stuff is because people don't want to go into court and talk about it. Big reason why they don't want to go into court and talk about it is because, think about what I just said before, our thoughts impact us physically, and our brains have a difficult time telling the difference between what's real and what isn't. So for me, I was thinking about, when I was talking about what happened to me, I had to literally see it. I had to remember what happened to me and describe it in front of a room of strangers and in front of the man that did it to me. Seeing those images affected me physically as though it were happening again and again and again and again and again. And for a long time, I thought I was crazy. But because of the work I did as a hypnotist, I finally started to learn and unpack that my mind was working the exact way it was supposed to be. And so are yours. You're having an anxious episode or experiencing symptoms of PTSD or depression, your mind is working the right way. Your thoughts are impacting you physically just as they should be. But if it's true that a negative or bad memory mingled with imagination gives us anxiety, we can reverse engineer that. Good memory with imagination can give us relief. And that is what hypnosis is. Hypnosis is the art of sculpting your imagination. It's not mind control, it's not voodoo, it's not magic. Feels like magic, for sure, but it's not. It's the ability to sculpt your imagination so that your imagination doesn't sculpt your life and your body in a way that you don't want. So when I was in the courtroom, for example, I literally thought about all the people that loved me and supported me behind me, even though they weren't there. I thought about them giving me energy and light. I thought about myself feeling strength emanating from within myself. And I was able to actually deliver my statement without being a blubbering mess. I still cried a lot, but I got through it okay. This is a practice. This is not something that can just happen overnight. Sculpting your imagination takes time, and you can do it without sitting cross-legged and with your eyes closed. You can do it every single moment of the day. You already do it every single moment of the day, by the way. By saying things about yourself. I am somebody who likes this. I am somebody who's seen as this. People think this about me. I think this about myself. You don't necessarily have to believe what you're thinking for it to affect you physically. Right? You don't believe what you watch on TV and it still affects you emotionally. So instead of going with the habitual pattern of saying whatever it is that you've been saying to yourselves for the first chapter of your lives, change it up. I started saying things like, every day in every way I'm getting better and better. I didn't believe it when I said it, but I just kept saying it over and over again. And finally, it became part of my inner monologue. And I started to understand that I can become the playwright of my own life. I'm not going to let other things and other people dictate that for me. I'm telling you this because bad things happen to all of us. Everyone here has something going on. When I finally started sharing this story with people before my show, because before, by the way, I was just doing a normal sticky comedy hypnosis show. And finally I was in rural Indiana, not too far away from here. And I was about to fly to Boston to testify in court. And I just broke down. I was like, guys, I'm really not in a good place right now, and I got to tell you why I care so much about this, because I'm literally going to self-hypnotize myself tomorrow. And I don't want to do this just for laughs. I want to show you how powerful this is. The show was totally different. I approached everything from a therapeutic angle, which is what I'm going to do tonight as well, if you join me. And people left with emotional reactions. A line formed out the door. And people started telling me one by one, not only what their experiences were during the show, but also what they were going through. People talking about being kidnapped, or family members kidnapped. Divorce, anxiety, suicide, self-harm, eating disorders, murder. Everyone's got something going on. Remembering that, too, is helpful because then it doesn't isolate you and your thinking. That's why the Me Too movement was so powerful. Because all of a sudden everyone started realizing, oh yeah, this is pretty normal and common. Not to say it's a good thing that it's normal and common, it's a good thing that we can find a connection with other people and not feel so alone and isolated. Vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. And the moment you can start to become the playwright of your own life and start to narrate to yourself that your weaknesses, or your so-called weaknesses that other people have pointed out to you over your life, can actually be a source of strength. You can start to actually build a life that you want for yourself rather than what other people have decided for you. Does that make sense to everybody? There's a guy named Alan Moore. I'm going to leave you with this. He is an author of V for Vendetta, Watchmen. Anybody here familiar with those graphic novels? Yeah, they're great. I highly recommend them if you're interested. He says that magic in its earliest form is often referred to as the art. He takes that to be literal. He says that art is magic, art being the manipulation of symbols, words, the body, writing, music, dance, theater, visual art, is literally magic. Even the language around magic has to do with the supernatural. A grimoire, for examples, is a book of spells. Just a fancy way of saying grammar. Indeed, to cast a spell is simply to spell. Spell out somebody's consciousness, cast a spell on somebody's consciousness, and to change how they're thinking with what you're saying, with what you create, with what you do. All of the content you consume, all the conversations you have with every single person have the ability to sculpt your imagination and to change your consciousness. And you also have that power, not only over yourselves, but about and towards other people. We're all wizards in that way. And if we start thinking about magic in terms of changing other people's consciousness, changing other people's minds, and changing our own, using nothing except our imaginations, then really amazing, powerful things start to happen. Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. Why would he say something like that? He's a really smart guy, a lot smarter than me. It's because it's true. You can know everything in the world and still have all the anxiety that's known to man. Start practicing sculpting your imagination. And I promise you, you will start to reap the benefits sooner than you think. I hope to see you tonight, and thank you so much for having me back again, everybody. Thank you again.